The first snapshot for the next game drop of Minecraft is here. 25w15a brings us the dried ghast blocks and the Happy Ghast mobs with his harness, and more. My name is Sliced Lime and this is a guide to all the changes. Let's start with the new ghasts. The dried ghast block can be found generated in the nether among nether fossil structures, or it can be crafted using 1 bone block and 8 ghast tears. You can mine it by punching without a tool and it breaks instantly. Placing it has no special requirements, it can be placed unsupported. It can be waterlogged, which changes its frowny face, and it then undergoes a transformation through 3 states over 20 minutes. These different states have different sounds and particles. Aborting the transformation by mining the block will revert it back to its original dry and unhappy state regardless of where it was in the process, and removing the water will make it start drying out at the same speed as it was hydrating. The dried ghast does not conduct redstone but can be moved by pistons and is dark grey on a map. Once the full 20-minute transformation has happened, the block disappears and a Ghastling mob spawns. This is the baby version of the Happy Ghast mob. It flies around like a bee and will try to follow players that get within 16 blocks, or an adult non-aquatic passive mob, and some neutral mobs within that radius. If there's no suitable target to follow within 16 blocks, the Ghastling will idle around an area of 32 blocks from its home position, which is set where it spawned, and then moves if the mob is interacted with. If the Ghastling is moved more than 48 blocks from its home position, it will also update its home position to where it was moved to. Like other baby mobs, Ghastlings grow over the course of 20 minutes, which is shortened if they are fed. The food of preference for Happy Ghast is a snowball, and they can also be tempted by holding snowballs. Once grown up, they become as large as the regular ghasts. Adult Happy Ghasts also love snowballs and are tempted by them, but cannot be fed to breed. The Happy Ghast is a new mount for up to 4 players, which requires a harness item. This is a new item which can only be equipped on Happy Ghasts, crafted out of 3 leather, 2 glass blocks and 1 wool block. It is a dyed item which will start out the same color as the wool block used to craft it, but can also be re-dyed by crafting it with a dye. If you have a harness item and the ghast isn't already wearing one, you can also use the harness to tempt it. The Happy Ghast is controlled by the first player who mounts it, who will be seated at the front of the mob just above the face. The goggles on the harness moves down in front of the eyes whenever the ghast is controlled. The controls for flying the ghast are a bit different than other mounts. Pressing the forward and backward buttons will move the ghast in the direction you are looking, or back away from it. Pressing left and right will strafe 90 degrees from that direction. Pressing the jump button moves the ghast straight upwards. When flying the Happy Ghast, the third-person camera is positioned further away from the player than normally. Flying it into water forces all players to automatically dismount. Players who mount after the pilot are placed in the side slots, starting clockwise from the pilot. If the pilot dismounts, the next player is moved into the pilot seat just like for other multi-slot vehicles. Pressing the crouch button makes you dismount just like in other vehicles. The dismount position is different though. Dismounting a Happy Ghast places you on top of the ghast where you can walk around. This also applies to Happy Ghasts without a harness if you jump onto it. An uncontrolled Happy Ghast with players on top of it will try to remain stationary and align with one of the cardinal directions, making its hitbox and its visuals align. Once there are no players riding or on top, the harness will flip up and the ghast will idle by roaming randomly within 32 blocks of its home position, similar to the Ghastling. If the Happy Ghast is not wearing a harness, this distance is instead 64 blocks. If there are players riding who dismounted in mid-air, the ghast will first descend towards the ground before roaming. When roaming, the Happy Ghast will attempt to stay close to blocks. The harness can be removed using shears, which only works when there are no players mounted on the ghast. Happy Ghasts have 20 hit points, that is 10 hearts. They have no panic behavior when they take damage. They cannot be fed to heal them, but can instead regenerate slowly by flying through rain or snowfall or flying at cloud level in the overworld. Unlike their grumpy nether counterparts, Happy Ghasts are not resistant to lava. Happy Ghasts cannot enter boats, but can enter minecarts. You wouldn't kill a Happy Ghast, would you? But if you did, they drop nothing except XP. You monster. Of course, this new mob also comes with a new spawn egg. In related news, the texture of the regular old grumpy ghasts have also been updated. There are also 2 new advancements in this version. Stay hydrated for placing a dried ghast into water, and Heart Transplanter for placing a creaking heart in alignment with 2 pale oak logs. There's a new experiment in this version, the Locator Bar. Turning this experiment on for a world will enable a new UI element for showing the direction to nearby players. This element replaces the experience bar above the hotbar when on a multiplayer server together with at least 1 more player. But unlike the XP bar, it is also visible when in creative and spectator modes. The experience bar pops up whenever you pick up XP and when in the enchanting or anvil screens. This is also controlled with a new game rule called Use a Locator Bar, which can enable or disable the feature dynamically. By default, all players show a waypoint for all other players, which allows you to locate others in multiplayer. The locator bar shows a colored indicator when the camera is facing within 120 degrees of a waypoint, and shows an up or down arrow if the target is outside the screen vertically. There is no maximum distance to how far away players show up on the locator bar, but above 300 blocks away the dot shows as faded and semi-transparent. It becomes more solid the closer you are to the player. If the player is on a team, their color will match that of the team, and is otherwise a random but consistent color for each player. That is to say, the color for the same player is always the same. Crouching hides you from the locator bar, as does wearing any skull or head item or a carved pumpkin, or using a potion of invisibility. Spectators are only visible to other spectators, just like in World. Let's move on to non-experimental gameplay news, where spectators that are spectating an entity will now be teleported with that entity if it moves to another dimension. They will, however, still stop spectating that entity. The firefly bushes have been updated to generate as many particles as they do on Bedrock Edition. And leaf litter no longer generates inside of woodland mansions. In sound news, ambient sounds for desert blocks have changed in this version. Ambient sand sounds no longer require the blocks to have sky access to play, and now overall have a slightly decreased chance to play. Terracotta blocks no longer trigger sand sounds. Sand and terracotta blocks no longer trigger wind sounds in desert and badlands biomes. Instead, these sounds are now triggered in any biome when a short or tall dried grass block is placed above 2 blocks of any sand or terracotta type. Dead bush ambient sounds now have a slightly increased chance of playing. And a subtitle fix. Trapdoors and doors now have consistent subtitles for opening and closing. In visual news, let's start with fixes for the Programmer Art Pack. Temperate cows now have their old texture in the Programmer Art Pack once again. The old brown mushroom texture is now back in the Programmer Art Pack. And the chicken spawn egg now has all its pixels when using the pack once again. Without the pack, Blaze and Breeze spawn eggs now have a size that more correctly indicate the size of the mob, and 2 pixels in the mushroom spawn egg have been fixed to not be the same as the cow spawn egg. 1 color in the icon for the pale oak chest boat has also been fixed. The legs of wolves, sheep, and pigs now have their textures mirrored. In user interface news, map icons now show up on maps when they are displayed inside a cartography table. The shadow of the advancement window border now properly shadows the icons. And the cancel button in the edit game rule screen now properly reverts changes made. And finally, this version comes with stability changes, including fixes for a couple of world upgrade bugs and crash fixes. And of course, this version also brings us technical news in Datapack version 71 and Resource Pack version 56, including new commands and attributes. If you're also interested in that, keep your eyes on the channel for a separate video. But that's all for this one. Thank you for watching. You can easily locate buttons for supporting the channel aligned in a bar under the video. My name is Slime, and I'll see you next time. It's a moist ghast.